Hey guys, welcome. My name is Stefan, and this is Empowering Bright Ideas, a place where I'm interviewing founders about their stories of success. This interview is very special for me because I'm chatting with a Florida-based founder. His name is Nick Mohnacky. Nick is building an AI-based startup called BundleIQ, which can help you facilitate research within your organization, as well as an AI assistant called ALANI, which can help you synthesize a lot of interesting information based on the documents that you might have in your organization. Join us as we're discussing Nick's story of building the company, as well as his vision for AI and its role in our future. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so let's get started. So perhaps I think it would be a great point to start for you to introduce yourself for a bit, sort of like an elevator pitch.
Yeah. So hi everyone, my name is Nick Mohnacky. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called BundleIQ. I've been a full-time technologist building apps and websites and that sort of thing since 2010. Previously worked in media, selling advertising for Cox Communications for 4.5 years, from 2006 to mid-2010. And yeah, it's been a crazy, fun journey here in South Florida.
And you're connecting from Boca, right?
I am in Boca currently, but I will be back in West Palm Beach today. I just came down here for an event at Lynn University. I was on a panel for pitching, basically fundraising.
Cool. If I'm not mistaken, you are from Florida, right?
Yeah, I was. So I was born here in Orlando, and then my parents, after they split, married a Marine. My mom married a Marine, and then we traveled to North Carolina for a brief period of time, and then to Hawaii, where I spent most of grade school. And then high school, I went to California. And then after he got out of the military, we moved back to Florida. So I moved down here when I was 17 to go to Palm Beach Atlantic University, which is in downtown West Palm Beach.
Cool. I know that you're an avid surfer. Did that start in Hawaii?
It actually started in Cocoa Beach. I started surfing when I was 5 years old, and one of my dad's friends, who was a big surfer, got me out on a longboard. So I think first few waves we rode tandem, but then after I moved to Hawaii, I definitely picked it up and then started surfing quite a bit as not an adult, but like a young adult in Huntington Beach, California.
Pardon the silly question, but I never knew that until recently that actually you can surf in Florida. Would you say that there's like a great environment for somebody to sort of enjoy big waves? I believe that there is a bunch of sharks around. I've never done it. That's why I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I'm laughing because the overall understanding of like where to surf in Florida is that, most places here, or most of the good spots are up in Central Florida, but without giving too much of the secrets away, South Florida actually has quite a bit of surf, Palm Beach County in particular. And what's really nice about it is that the Gulf Stream is closest to Palm Beach. I think Lake Worth Pier is like the closest point in the Gulf Stream, where it's like 2 or 3 miles offshore, and so we get like that beautiful blue water that most places, really nowhere else in the continental U.S. has it, except you go to Hawaii and you get beautiful blue water. But that's it, yeah. But there are waves here, contrary to belief, and there are also a lot of sharks.
That's what I was. Yeah, that sounds a bit scary. Do you surf on a regular basis still?
I do, yeah. I see the beach probably 350 days a year. So I checked the surf this morning, and there was a little wave, and there was probably like 12 people out longboarding, and just like these beautiful little rollers in Palm Beach.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And is that usually morning exercise, or is that how do you find the time for that?
It depends. I mean, it's one of those sports that is dependent on Mother Nature, right? So it's not like you can just go play basketball on the basketball court after work. So, surfers are the ones that are avid surfers are kind of like amateur weathermen. So we're constantly like checking the swell and the wind and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, when the waves are good, I'm out there. I mean, even if it's midday, I'll take an hour or two off and just go surf.
That's cool.
And if I'm not mistaken, this was one of your first ventures related to this sort of hobby of yours, the app that you've built.
Yeah.
How did your journey to entrepreneurship start?
So my professional journey is a little bit different than my origin story. I was 12 years old and living in Hawaii, and at 13, you're old enough to buy a spear gun. And so my mom was like, there's not a chance I'm buying you a spear gun. You're going to shoot yourself, you're going to shoot your friends, right? So I took it upon myself to and I didn't know I was doing what I was doing, but I was like, all right, I'm going to start mowing lawns so I can get some money. I'm going to sell my Sega Genesis and all the games at a yard sale so I can get some money. So I think it was like $200 or $300 or something for a nice spear gun back then. And so that was kind of the origin of my entrepreneur journey. Like I had a legitimate lawn business where I was making thousands. I mean, I was 12 years old making thousands of dollars, like in cash, so I had these shoe boxes with just all this cash in it. And that was, I did that. And then I started a paper route. So I was a paper boy for the Honolulu Advertiser. So the Sunday paper for 220 homes got delivered by me. And then my formal journey started in 2010, technically.
I mean, it sounds similar to Mark Cuban, to be honest. I think he started a similar way, where he was sort of throwing out newspapers to people's lawns and things like that. How did you use all that money?
Well, the irony of the spear gun story is that I bought this beautiful spear gun, and the irony of the story is that I wasn't strong enough to pull the bands back. So I couldn't use it. So I had a fisherman pull the bands back for me one time just so I could shoot it once, and then I had to return it. So
wow.
I ended up buying a pole spear and a nice diving mask and I had all the best equipment. I would buy shoes and whatever. I don't know. I found plenty of ways to spend money.
Cool. Fast forward to 2010, right? I mean, you've had this career in stable, normal job, I believe, right? What made you start on this entrepreneurial journey? I'm assuming there was no motivation for you to why did you start that? What was your push towards that?
So, if you can recall, in 2006 to 2007, there was like this run up on the market in terms of the stock market and just
and then the crisis,
prosperity and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of like, you had the big housing bubble, right? If you've seen The Big Short, everybody knows the story now.
Oh yeah.
So my role, and I was an advertising sales rep for the Palm Beach Post, and my role specifically was digital sales. And so, because I was kind of the youngest guy in the room, they were like, okay, he can do the technology stuff. And so I sold digital ads, and the accounts that I ran were real estate and automotive primarily. So I mean, there were months that we were selling, I think, upwards of $1 million a month in ads.
Wow.
So I worked with a lot of the big agencies that had these developers like Pulte, Lennar, Syntex, Toll Brothers, Minto, etc. And they were spending lots of money because it was a land grab, right? They were just trying to get as many people into these homes as possible with the mortgages that allowed zero down payment, right? So that was my foray into advertising, and then we partnered with Yahoo to start bringing what was really advanced at that time. It was cutting edge. It was geo-targeting and behavioral targeting. So now the Brayman Porsche dealership on Okeechobee Boulevard could advertise in Yahoo Finance, so I could sell ads into. And Yahoo still, even at that time, was still pretty prominent as a news media source. I think Yahoo Finance is still pretty prominent. But we could geo-target those ads so that if you were on Yahoo Finance, you could actually see a local car dealership, which was pretty novel at that time. This is before Google had acquired DoubleClick. so I learned a lot about technology. I got a lot of exposure to that whole world. And then, as everyone knows, September 29th, 2008, I guess it was, the stock market crashed. And then by 2010, the Palm Beach Post had let go of 1,100 people. And Cox was actually pretty generous. They did a buyout package for a lot of people. I was not one of those people that got let go because I was still kind of driving the engine on the advertising front. But over time, the morale just kind of became a bit more dismal, and creativity was being suppressed, and the sales goals and everything were just being blown wildly out of proportion, and salaries got slashed. I mean, it was a mess. So, at the ripe age of 25, I was like, okay, enough of this. Like, I'm like literally on the verge of I actually did have a panic attack, and it was like July 7th, 2010. I kind of remember it was around 3 a.m. My heart's exploding out of my chest. And I'm like, what is going on? And I was just overly worked, overly stressed. And also what I realized during that period of time is that people didn't want to buy ads. Like if you remember, the iPhone came out in 2007, and by 2010 they had taken enough market share from BlackBerry that the world was starting to evolve, that websites needed to be mobile friendly. And so what I did is I straight up just started an agency, and all of my customers that I had, I started building mobile websites for them. And I was like,
that's really cool. So
this is a natural transition. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and that was Pixel Agency, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And for how long did that exist? When did you start working on the agency?
So 2010 to 2000, we probably shut it down maybe 2015, somewhere around there.
Oh wow! So 5 years. And was that caused by sort of you were working on some new ventures, or was the agency model sort of exhausting itself?
I realized pretty quickly, so we were doing mobile websites, and then we got into app development and app marketing. One of our biggest client during that period of time was Zynga in California, and that was probably 2012 maybe. And that's kind of a whole nother narrative, which we can talk about. But basically, this small agency in West Palm Beach, Florida, we'd be flying out to San Francisco and working out of the old Atari building that Mark Pincus bought to create app videos and help with their app game development and stuff. But over time, I was like, you know what? Like, getting paid for like a billable hour is just not that fun. So we started we started developing our own apps, and that's kind of what sort of got me into developing the Surfer app. We had a teleprompter app that was very popular. It was top 20 most downloaded productivity apps on the iPad for about a year, I guess, or maybe more. And then even before that, we had a DJ app for the iPad called Mixer, and it was the first turntable DJ app for the iPad that was also very popular for a few years.
And that was still before the time that SaaS was a popular model, right? So how did you monetize all of those systems that you've built?
It's funny. You're like piercing through the veil right now. It was a pay per download model. So for Mixer it was $19.99 per download, and then for Prompter it was, I think, $2.99 per download. So that's how we made money. Yeah. And then Surfer was actually an advertising based model, but the business model of the way by which we went to market, knowing what I know now about doing business and apps and all that kind of stuff, I probably would have changed or evolved that pretty quickly.
What would you do differently?
Well, I mean, the SaaS model, recurring revenue model is supreme. So you got to figure out a way to get recurring revenue. That's the big thing.
Honestly, I feel like the fear these days is that there's just too many SaaS apps. Like, for instance, like I'm working on the podcast right now. There's like 10 apps that I need to use, starting with Adobe Suite, to this software Riverside that I use for recording this, to software that splits up the video into like small chunks, and so many others. It's almost like it's almost like it becomes a death by 1,000 cuts to a business at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that unless those companies get absorbed by Adobe or like a Figma,
Yeah.
Right? And then also I don't know. Actually, there's some FTC stuff going on with that as well. Like they're saying that the bundling of apps into one price is actually killing competition. But
Really?
there's a lot to
there's
a lot to be said about SaaS products and how many there actually are. But yeah, and they're all pretty. I mean, the goal is obviously like vertical integration or specialty or whatever, right? Like
Right.
Riverside.
That's true. So when did you come up with this idea of AI? So 2015 is the time when you stopped working on the agency, and then I believe you didn't really focus on BundleIQ until 2019 or around that time when the GPT-3 model was released. So what was your journey before then? I know you've worked on a couple of ventures in between, but I'd love to hear what were your biggest sort of endeavors that you focused on.
So I had a surfing app that was kind of like a surf journal, to think of like a dive app to sort of memorialize. So you could be like, oh, this day last year I was surfing in Nicaragua or what have you. And that app was something that is really, a big passion of mine. And I'll probably, after I sell Bundle, I'll probably go back and redo that in a different way. And I almost made it with that one, but it was advertising-based business model. And we actually had a $40,000 a month contract with the Tourism Bureau of France to deliver ads. But with display advertising, it's all about the impressions, and you really only get paid on what you deliver. So
Sure.
We didn't have enough inventory, which is like the catch-22, right? You got to have the eyeballs in order to deliver the ads. But anyway, that's the app that I was working on in 2015, and then through living, and I had moved to California at that point because that's kind of where the surf industry is.
Yeah.
But I met somebody out there in around that time that's a Nat Geo photographer. He was out of LA, and the funny story is I went on a date with a girl that I got set up with, and we were in Venice Beach, and the date really didn't work out, but she was like, I don't know if this is going to work out, but I want to introduce you to my friend Ben because I think you guys would have a lot in common. And I was like, okay, cool. So
That's a very interesting way to have an outcome of a date.
Yeah. But it was serendipitous, I guess.
Yeah.
And so Ben and I started an agency together, like basically from 2015 till I started in 2019 building Bundle, and that was a adventure travel agency or adventure travel marketing agency, and so that was kind of the gap between the surfing app and BundleIQ, which I can talk about the agency if you want.
I see. Yeah. I'd love to. I mean, I didn't find much actually about that agency online. I was trying to explore as much as I could, but this wasn't really available. So I'd be curious, what was that journey like? What was your main focus on that endeavor? Because this is your second agency now, so you weren't excited about the per hour model previously, but you decided to do this. Why? What was the motivation?
Yeah, it was different. Ben, his name's Ben Horton, by the way. You can look him up. Ben, or anyone who's listening to this can look him up. Interesting guy. So he had this concept that he created called an access campaign, and the agency ultimately that we created was called Access Collective. And the access campaign, this, mind you, this is like right around like the influencer marketing era.
Yeah.
As like maybe before it got too popular, or now it's probably, I don't know if it's on the other side of the bell curve now. I have no idea, but anyway, this is sort of on the upward trajectory of it.
Yeah.
And so this access campaign, the idea is that you come up with this crazy adventure, and then you get brands to kind of come alongside you, and so you sell, let's say, $10,000 sponsorship, and then Ben, being a Nat Geo photographer and explorer, he would take photos of this lifestyle of the adventures. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're, climbing a 1,000-foot frozen waterfall.
Yeah.
Like something just out there that like not that many people can do. That's why it's called access. Like we're giving you access to this experience. Mm-hmm. And then you get a company like Arc'teryx and Black Rapid and Canon and Black Diamond and like whomever, like these mm-hmm. companies, and they're all kind of synergistic. And then we go out there and basically climb this waterfall and shoot all this footage, and then we license the footage to the brands to use for their marketing.
Oh, so that's almost like just a higher sort of premium type of UGC. That is just not somebody sitting in their car talking, but rather something super interesting. But that also means that since you guys were the bottleneck of production of that content, that was probably super expensive. What was the pricing point of that kind of content?
Yeah, it was expensive-ish, but if you think about it from the context of a brand, like if you actually wanted to go do that, you'd have to find the talent. Obviously,
oh yeah, for sure, it's much more expensive.
Yeah, way more expensive. So it's essentially was like a co-op, like a marketing co-op. So we all got to each brand sort of got to share in the cost of the overhead of what it took to actually do that.
And how did you? Yeah, sure.
And I was going to say, in terms of our, like, for us selfishly, and the reason why this, like, was different than the other agencies, I went on some crazy ass adventures. So, like, it was a very, like, it's like I was at a period of time in my life that I was like, well, I don't really have, like, another thing yet. So I got to go on some pretty cool adventures.
Last question before we get to BundleIQ. How did you identify the desires of your potential clients? Did you already have them excited and then you went to produce the content, or was it the other way around? How did you overcome the chicken and egg situation there?
So we had created, or Ben had created like one particular access campaign. So he had this sort of was like cobbled together, self-funded / got a few sponsorships. Maybe just paid for the campaign or paid for the travel. And so we were able to point to that as the model, and it sort of sold itself. I mean, to a degree. I mean, we still had to do some selling in terms of like getting some brands on board to pay X amount because it wasn't like really on their radar to do something like this. But after everyone kind of got educated on what it looked like and what the value proposition was, it was pretty clear that, like I said, if they had to go do something like this to get these insane shots that they could use, it would cost them a lot more money than paying us, to do an access campaign.
What was your strategy for sales?
So Ben is pretty well connected in the outdoor space. He was a professional snowboarder, climber, the youngest Nat Geo explorer, and I'm was very well connected in the kind of the advertising world. So we just kind of combined our efforts and
I see. So that wasn't a challenge. I see. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. All right, cool. So fast forward to 2019, right? What is the catalytic moment for you when you realized that you need to focus on this new AI vector on these LLMs?
Yeah, so I had moved back to Florida, and I was my friend he has a wine bar, and he decided that the wine bar, I think it opens at like 3 or 4 o'clock, that during the day he was going to create a breakfast concept. And so my ex-girlfriend at the time, she partnered with him to create this breakfast concept called the AM shift inside of a wine bar. So it was like a breakfast brunch type place. And
that's cool.
And so I was there basically every morning having an acai bowl and coffee and just hanging out. And this guy, one of the other regulars, his name's Jeff Robbins, who's now my co-founder and business partner in BundleIQ, was there reading a book, and he had just sold his last company, and was just kind of trying to figure out like what he wanted to do next, and I was starting to wind down the agency and was also trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And we had started talking about just some ideas, and one of the, I think the big picture ideas and sort of the thing that was really frustrating is like how difficult it is to make sense of the world. It's just so complex, whether it's, COVID or climate change or who to vote for. It's just, I feel like
There's so much data.
Yeah, we're all just kind of like scratching the surface of like information and understanding and ultimately like knowledge, the ability to make sense of things, to solve whatever problems we're up against.
It's kind of paradoxical because from one standpoint, our attention span gets smaller with everything, but the amount of data that is available to us grows exponentially. So how are you supposed to interpret all of that and really make wise decisions? You're right. You're just literally scratching the surface, and every scratch you make is thinner.
Exactly. So given that context and that framing that you just so eloquently explained, I was like, how do you wrangle all this unstructured data? Like, I feel like as a society, we've done in terms of technology, we've done a good job at creating structured data and like business intelligence, like charts and graphs and things like that with spreadsheets and, CRMs and, Tableau and Airtable and like all those things. Like they've done a great job like doing their job on that side, but nobody's really like figured out the unstructured data, like all the paragraphs and sentences and reports and like all that kind of stuff, so that you can start to, distill it down to something that is actionable, relating to whatever context of work that you're in. So
I can relate to this very much. I mean, when I have to read papers for my PhD work, it's a daunting and exhaustive task where there's, you've seen these papers, like it's really tough to understand what's inside unless you really read it through, and there is only so much you could pay attention to until you're exhausted, your brain.
Exactly. So you've heard building a better mousetrap. So I was like, all right, maybe I can build a better bookshelf. Like there's a way to like organize information that can help people kind of tap into it more easily. And so I kind of set down that path, and that was originally B Notes, which was the concept of like taking like what Slack did with messaging and apply it to notes and documents and things like that. But then I realized pretty quickly, like that's not actually solving the real problem, which is this sense-making problem. Ultimately people want to know, like in the concept, let's say you're writing a strategy, a sustainability plan for the city of Boca Raton, which is a coastal city, has whatever urban planning strategy they have and department they have. And then there's all these climate reports that may or may not be relevant to the context of Boca Raton as a city, but there's certainly like coastal, carbon sequestration models and all this other GIS data, right? So it's like, if you actually have to create a 10-year plan without just kind of making it up, like you need for it to be informed, like how do you write those paragraphs and know that in the 3,000 page IPCC report that on page number 172 in paragraph number 4 that's like going to be a contextually relevant piece of the puzzle that you need to sort of understand.
Yeah.
And so that's what we ultimately did, is we said, I guess the only way to actually surface those insights would be to use AI. And we went down this path of like keyword matching originally. And mind you, this is like GPT-2. Like I didn't even really know, like GPT-3 it didn't exist yet. And so I didn't get exposed to the transformer model world until COVID. And I met, I hosted a room called the Florida Entrepreneur Club with a friend of mine who is also in Boca. His name's Jeff. and I was in a room, and Greg Brockman was also in the room, who's the co-founder of OpenAI, and we were talking about AI and talking about, I don't know exactly what we were talking about, but anyway, I reached out to him later, and I didn't realize he was actually the Greg Brockman from OpenAI, and then the next morning I had an invite to the OpenAI Slack channel, and or like Slack account, and there was probably, I don't know, maybe a few hundred people at that point in there, and the Slack channel's like long gone, but and then I had access to beta, so I started using OpenAI to build BundleIQ, during COVID.
Wow.
So.
What was your journey throughout that period? I mean, you've built products before, but the products you've built prior to this were, I would say, if you don't mind me saying, they were much more straightforward, right? You didn't need to do much research, right? You just knew, I want to hire a developer that would be able to build me an app or a website, right? That's moderately approachable these days. But this is an entirely new thing. And do you have any background in computer science? Like, how did you approach this point of building that proof of concept?
Yeah, so before BundleIQ, I've probably built either for customers or for personal projects, maybe seven to 10 or 11 apps maybe. So let's just call it like at least upwards of a dozen apps. And I'll tell you that 2 of them were actually pretty complex. One in different ways. One was Mixer, which I'm not a software engineer. I'm not even like technically not the founding technical team of that app, but I was involved in the entire process along the way, and did a lot of the marketing for it and stuff. But to get a pitch perfect scratch in code is like black magic. It's like it's way more like trigonometry than it is algebra.
Yeah.
And so that was I think they ended up giving away like 30% of the company because there was only one guy in the world that we could find that could do it. And we're talking like, we had some serious engineers on this project, like serious engineers. The lead guy, his name's Ben Stallhood. He the first app he ever built was Nike Plus, and he anyway. So there's this guy Art Gillespie out of Arizona that was able to do that, to make that pitch perfect scratch. So that was a technical challenge among other things. And then the surfing app was a massive data aggregator because we had every surf spot in the world and all the data around surf spots and all the wind directions and all the NOAA buoys and it was actually quite a bit of complexity in terms of
that's a huge ingestion system you had to build. Yeah.
Yeah. So fast forward to BundleIQ, and from a technical standpoint, we were creating these semantic models using transformers like BERT transformers off of Hugging Face, and building our own ensembles way before vector databases were even like a conversation. Like Pinecone didn't exist, like OpenAI embeddings didn't exist, like none of that shit existed. So which was actually pretty fortuitous because we ended up building our own ingestion like systems, which is highly scalable, and it ended up actually benefiting us because now we're working with enterprise customers and we're not really beholden even to OpenAI at this point.
Interesting.
So
that's much more secure for
interesting thing. Yeah. I've always, even though I don't write the code, I've always been a technical communicator. I understand how the systems work and what pieces need to be plugged in to create these, to create the infrastructure for it. So that being said, like I sort of had an implied understanding of what maybe like a thesis of like how we would eventually get there. And so I started to talk about like keyword matching. So if I'm going to surface paragraph number 5 on page number whatever in this corpus of content, there's only a couple ways that you can get there. One is keywords, which is explicit. If you're talking about dogs, then that paragraph needs to probably have dogs in it. Otherwise, it's not going to know that it's a domestic animal or a cat, or there's not like a real narrative there. And then once I realized that keywords can only get you sort of maybe a third of the way there, then I started to realize, okay, that's when I got into transformers and like semantic analysis and tokens and vectors and all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's actually how you contextualize a paragraph. And then, and by the way, like I'm the one driving this, like telling my engineers about the new technology because I'm like obsessed with solving this problem.
I think it's important to emphasize how unique your approach is compared to what some founders might expect. I think there's a group of people, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's the way some people just approach work, right? You think you're just going to find yourself a developer or an agency or some sort of a CTO, and they're just going to do it for you, and you're going to work on sales and things like that. But that approach wouldn't really work in your situation because, you have to build something so novel that nobody has done before, that unless you are knee-deep in this thing yourself, nobody's going to be able to do it for you. Nobody will understand your vision. So you really have to understand it yourself. You have to spend the time learning.
Yeah,
that sounds like
I did. I was on Clubhouse. I learned a lot on Clubhouse. And I got to talk to, so many different scientists and researchers and MIT postdoc researchers, and I mean it was incredible. And I built so many relationships, like, and also I think being just to kind of bring it home, like being a founder in South Florida is actually really hard, like a high tech founder down here. Yeah. Just because there isn't really like that robust network. There isn't like a tier 1 university or network of universities that you're sort of just around. I'm sitting at Lynn University. I mean, it's a great school, but it's not the same, right?
It's great for in a different vector. Same as Florida Atlantic University, my place. It's great, but like let's say it's not a pioneer university in AI. So for sure.
Exactly.
So what happened then? So you built your POC. What was it able to do at the time?
So we had a Chrome extension that could recognize what you type and also what you read if you like highlighted something, and offer contextually relevant information from a knowledge base. So it could say, based on what you're typing right now, here's what you might want to consider looking at or reading. Or based on what you've highlighted as you've indicated as a focus area, here's what you might want to cross-examine.
And how did you generate that knowledge? Was it just part of the model that you were utilizing, or did you fine-tune it somehow?
So that's actually what makes BundleIQ really unique, is that the knowledge is curated. So you could, let's say, upload reports and books and every business book you've ever read, and like you basically get to bundle up this data, and that gets to be your sort of primary library of knowledge that you get to pull from. So where the sources are coming from. All the material is sourced, so it's not like a kind of what everyone would think of as a traditional LLM that isn't grounded in source material.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And at what state is your product at the moment? Where are you moving so far? It's been a couple of years, and now that there is ChatGPT, there is a bunch of others. There is Emofric, I believe the name is. There is Bard, right? All of them are so well funded. What is your current objective? What are you moving towards? Since I'm guessing, like, they're so well funded, it's really a tough fight for you, I'm guessing. Yeah,
in some ways. I mean, we definitely have to keep raising, and I'm actively raising a round right now. I just closed a round earlier this year, and now I'm raising another round. But in terms of the product and sort of where we're going, I mean, I think the big thing that people and founders in general probably, or I don't know, say maybe the outside world probably doesn't always understand, is like when you're looking at, like you just said, all these companies that are really well funded, like as a founder, I sort of have this like angle of approach that still hasn't been totally like captured yet, and so I see like a really clear path to gaining more and more market share. Funding's a big part of that, but that just gives us more horsepower, more people to do things faster.
So you're focusing on a particular one niche for BundleIQ. You're just not going generic, I understand. So what is that niche for you at this moment?
Yeah, so it's funny because yesterday I met with a mentor of mine who's like helping kind of refine the pitch and the pitch deck, and he took my words and sort of reconstructed it and reframed it based on the way that he understands the business. And he's like, you're really like AI for the paywall. And he's like, you're the company that, you mentioned Bard and ChatGPT and Llama and like whatever, right? Like, Perplexity, all these apps that can give you information, free information, or maybe paid, I guess, if you have a premium membership. But regardless, it's all it's like on the they're boiling the ocean and trying to like surface meaningful information for you. And what BundleIQ does is gives you valuable information. So there's a bit of distinction between the type of information and insight you might be getting on one side versus the type of information and insight you're getting on the other side. And that's what makes us really different, is that
interesting.
If you're trying to make strategic decisions or your reputation depends on it, you're going to use BundleIQ. And it's because the information is just that much more valuable.
How do you quantify the value in this sentence? So perhaps you could provide an example.
So I'll give you an example. So there's a lot of information that's behind a paywall that these LLMs just inherently don't have access to. Mm-hmm. And so what we've done is we've said, you know what, that data, like people still want the conversational AI experience. They kind of want to be able to connect those dots more easily. So what we've done is we've targeted those publishers that have proprietary knowledge and we give them the opportunity to then make that data available to their constituents, their subscribers, in a conversational manner, and also to users of BundleIQ. So let's say you perform a Google search for something, whatever it is, or a Bard, maybe not a Bard search because Bard's kind of its own ecosystem.
And it's still public.
Yeah. It's just all public information, right? You're not going to get the report from PitchBook that talks about the EV, go-to-market strategies that they're seeing across whatever, and that's where like BundleIQ can unlock that valuable information and insight for you because we have a subscription or we have a relationship with PitchBook, for instance, and we don't have a relationship yet with PitchBook, but there are companies that we do. Like a company called Future Commerce, that's one of them.
So with this model, but you're still billing the end user. You're still a B2C company at the end of the day, right? So a person like myself, I can just sign up.
B2B
it's
and
both.
B2C. Yeah. So you're the B2C customer, but then we're saying, okay, there's actually some information over here in we'll call it the Politico Pro subscription. Or the PitchBook Pro subscription that you might want to reference, and so you would see that, but in order to access that, you got to click subscribe, and then we can surface that knowledge. For you.
I see. So you're verifying whether you're a paid subscriber, and only then you expose the information.
Exactly.
But then how does that work? Do you have separate models for separate B2B vendors? Or is it like a unified model for everybody? Because if that's the case, how do you delineate between?
Yeah.
I see. Interesting. You know what? This makes a whole bunch of sense.
And basically what we're doing, we're bringing these knowledge graphs together. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that they can be shared, essentially.
So let's say B2B customer comes into you and they say, guys, we want to adopt your model. We want to build a model with you. how does that work on the financial side and on the operational side? So like, what kind of data do I need to give you, as well as how do you charge for this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so let's say that you're a publisher of some sort. We typically will have like either an ingestion fee, depending on how big you are, or how many pages. It's built around pages because we run machine learning and all that data.
Yep.
And then basically blocks of prompts. So you can, let's say it's 50,000 pages and 500 prompts as an example. And then there's a fee for that, and then sort of each one kind of has its own tier beyond that.
I see. And then they just provide your API to their users on their own portal, or do their users need to go to BundleIQ to explore that information?
So it's kind of twofold. If they want to, let's say now we're managing their data. So now we ran the AI on it. We can spin out an API and it can live natively on their website. So now you can have this conversational AI with all of, X publisher's data. So that's the native experience. So now you're getting this ChatGPT-like experience for all this information. And it's also, by the way, sourced. So it's like, here's a response, and here's the article, and here's the article, and here's the article that you can reference. So there's that. And then on the flip side, if they want it to be discoverable, not all companies do, not all publishers do, but if they want their content to be discoverable, then we can surface this content to any BundleIQ user. So anyone that's on the platform, we can sort of engineer some serendipity and say, okay, you may not have this in your knowledge base, but there's content out here that you might want to examine.
This is amazing, because now even if that's almost like a new sales channel for them. Because if I'm going to type in, let's say I want to have this research on this particular field, and it's going to expose to me that there is Forrester, there is some other journal that I can explore, there is some other research that I can explore. Sure, it's paid, but I wouldn't otherwise know that there is that relevant nugget for me out there if you did not tell me about that based on my contextual question. Is that the vision?
100%, exactly.
That
Yep.
Oh my God! I mean, that's Google. That's next Google, essentially.
It is. Yeah, we like to say we're like, in some ways, like re-indexing the internet.
But oh my God, no! This is. I see so much value in this. You know what? I was actually thinking of a similar idea. I was chatting with a couple of folks that I work with in my company, and we've been trying to adopt a client portal for my agency for a while, and we didn't really find anything exciting. Long story short, we've tried to use Intercom. I'm sure you're familiar with the product. It's customer support stuff, right? So, if let's say you were to partner with Intercom or Zoho or some other company, that, let's say Zendesk or whatever, that provides them with the chat support, they do provide some advice and some aggregation on top of chats to help support teams to produce content, like support articles, so that you didn't have to text every time. But essentially, if they could expose their data to you, you could help build fully AI-based communication sequences with users of whatever platform without customer support whatsoever. Which means that you're saving millions of dollars. The only question that's what I was thinking all the time, because there's multiple ways you can commercialize AI for yourself if you're an entrepreneur, right? One is you build some sort of a wrapper around existing based, like OpenAI model or something. So like Jasper AI did that and a couple of others. Second is you tailor AI for your niche. So let's say you do junk removal and you want to sort of build a system that would take a look at a picture of junk and say how much it would cost. Or you leverage a proprietary data set and you build a new model, fine-tuned model based on that, which now has exponentially more value because nobody else can get that data set. So like if United Healthcare were to leverage, obviously there's like a whole bunch of limitations on that, but if some health company were able to leverage all of the health data for millions of Americans and train a model based on that and give it to doctors, how much more value would that give to a doctor who's trying to diagnose the next customer, the next visitor or whatever? You're sitting in a gold mine.
Yeah, that's you mentioned valuable, and that's kind of going back to like the primary distinction between free information and valuable information, and that's the world that we're aiming to continue to build upon.
I'm going to ask a question which is super interesting for me, but it might not be for the audience. Who is your cloud provider?
Google Cloud, yeah.
What is your monthly bill for that? I'm not asking a specific number, but like it's probably humongous.
You
have to train all these models.
Every time it goes up, we figure out a way to optimize it, and it's definitely going up, but it's still manageable. It's not as big as probably you think it is.
Okay.
It's still manageable, yeah.
All right. No, it's just like I'm familiar with what can be the cost of retraining the new ChatGPT model, for example. It's
8 figures. Yeah, we're not relying as much on the LLM as we are on building more of a contextualization engine. The LLM is useful for articulation. Because it's a predictive model that can like string together sentences based on and we're feeding it the context to do that very well, like to do that efficiently. So like our IP is built around how we contextualize data primarily.
I understand.
We're not gonna be a Claude or Anthropic type company. We'll let them keep building with their billions of dollars. But we'll definitely be a data management company. Yeah, I mean, like but managing the proprietary data is where really that's the gold,
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, I was obsessed about Atlassian and Confluence for a while because of what they've done to help companies to manage the data they have. But all of that is super manual. What you're doing is the next stage on top of that, almost like the next iteration. A couple more questions that I think might be interesting for those who want to start in this space and just don't have enough experience in technical background. How would you suggest for someone who doesn't have the technical background to approach building the team to help them build it, given that they don't have millions of dollars of funding? How would you approach this if you were new to this space and you wanted to build this whole new idea?
Oh, man. There's a lot of like off-the-shelf type stuff that you can do to start prototyping, like no-code solutions and APIs. I mean, a lot of this like highly technical stuff and infrastructure-based stuff that we've done is now kind of, like you said, a SaaS type product now. So you could bring together maybe like 10 different SaaS products and probably get at least a good prototype. It might not be scalable from a data perspective, but you could definitely bring it together. So I would say just really focus on low code, no code tools that can help you prototype things much faster than what we did. I mean, that was part of the challenge with some of the stuff we were doing, is like we spent a lot of time and money on R&D. I mean, because now everything's obvious, right? You just use ChatGPT API or embeddings API, right?
Yeah.
But before it wasn't obvious at all. Like none of that stuff it didn't exist. So, now everyone's got that advantage. And also that's part of the challenge too now, is like it's so saturated. Or it can be so saturated, and also it's not easy to see through the noise of like what's a substantial business versus a wrapper or whatever. But anyway, to answer your question, low code, no code, and then a bunch of APIs. Like you could use Integromat or Make, whatever the new brand is now, as an example too.
So a follow up on this, if you were to start your venture today, right, with all the saturation in the market and the noise, how would you approach it? Would this be your still go-to, like to build it like BundleIQ, or would you be working on something else?
Well, I have a better understanding of what it takes to do what we do now, so I definitely wouldn't try to tackle as much as we've tackled in building like an entire I mean, that's the thing, is like we have a platform. We don't have just like a feature. It's like an entire platform. So I probably would focus on like what you said as a product statement or problem statement and product, is like the ingestion and the, basically like the chatbot type experience just for proprietary data, and maybe integrate it into an intercom or like one of the popular ones to start. That way, it's so specialized. Every single website that has an intercom app on it, and I don't know if intercom has an API, but let's just assume that they do. You could essentially bundle up all their customer, documentation, knowledge, whatever, and like make that available, for $12,000 a year or whatever it is.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in BundleIQ in 5 to 10 years? I know this is a very volatile space, but still, what is your vision for the company, given everything we've discussed?
Yeah, I see us being like the Roku of the new internet. It's like, you think about what happened from cable to online streaming. Cable was kind of the primary box that everyone sort of got all their entertainment, movies, and everything, right? It was like one thing. And then that's essentially been Google for so long, is like that one entry point into the world's information. And what's happening as a result of generative AI is it basically flipped the whole internet on its head, because now people don't have to go to Google. They just want to talk to their chatbot, to get the answers, right? Which is why, it's a race with Bard and Claude and all these LLMs to figure that stuff out. And ChatGPT is obviously doing a good job with their plugins and what have you. But we want to essentially help publishers, the media companies, the indie creators like yourself, get paid, like give them the conversational AI experience and get paid for it. And so that's essentially where we're kind of have this Wayne Gretzky moment where we're like skating to where the puck's going, and that's why all the lawsuits are out right now against OpenAI, and we want to be that new knowledge hub where people can just go curate. So it's like, that's why I say Roku. It's like you just want to pick what subscriptions you want and you watch them. Those are your movies, right? I want to select what knowledge I want to curate, like maybe I'm in finance or I'm a legislative aide or whatever I am, and then that data automatically gets added to your knowledge graph. And then obviously we want to also engineer some serendipity and help people discover knowledge as well. So you said it's like the new Google, and that's kind of where I see us being.
Your CTO, when we started the call, he mentioned that there's a couple of new things coming up on BundleIQ. What should the users expect in the next couple of months?
So we are launching our first few publishers. So this conversational AI subscription is happening. Like it'll be visible in October. So that's really exciting because we've got
This is really cool.
Yeah, we have the #1 e-commerce podcast in the United States is launching with us, and then we've got a couple like industry. Because think about this, like there's so many industry associations. Think about so one of them is the International Tin Association, TIN. I think they're out of the UK. But think about all the reports and all of the data and all the information and all the around just the just tin as a metal, right?
Yeah.
It goes into whatever, batteries and construction and blah blah blah. Like all that knowledge is not sitting on Google. So if you're in that world, that's like an easy subscription. Boop, like now that knowledge becomes your knowledge.
I think that's where I struggle so much with research myself. And I think that's where this idea sort of hit me like a freaking hammer into my head, because what I have to do as a PhD student is that when I need to always be on the edge of what's going on with my research space. And I never am, because in order to do this, I need to consistently read 10, 15 papers every day, every week, whatever. It's extremely challenging. And it's impossible to balance that with other work that I have to do, including podcast, company, writing, whatever. So having this navigator that's going to take you by your hand and lead you to the right place, given that you can just plug some context of what are you trying to do, is irreplaceable. And again, a lot of this stuff, and this is a perfect example because IEEE publications, Elsevier publications, all those things, they're behind the paywall. Yes, my university gives me access, but what if I'm not part of my university? What if I'm just an indie researcher? What if I'm part of some sort of a startup? And this is where I think the core of what Google tried to do still is, but again, they don't have the access. So, and again, that ties so much into the sales, which is, I think it's like another business model potentially for you, because if you could convince, once you get to the point where you have so much traffic come into your system and you have all these visitors, you could just come into a certain provider of data and say, hey, we can give you so many leads if you just give us access to your data. Anyways, I'm not going to say too much, but you get the point. I'm obsessed. This is really freaking cool. Nick, I know you have to run, so I just want to say thank you for taking the time. And I'm really, really impressed about what you do, about your delta, where you started and where you are right now, how you started with an agency and you build these apps, and now you're building this, you're on the edge and you're beyond the edge at this point. I'm really curious to be following what you do, and I want to follow up with you sometime, hopefully in October, to check out what new things you're going to release. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I would love that. I appreciate you you reaching back out again. It was good to see a familiar face and hear from you. So thank you.